Aqua Global specialise in payments and reconciliation software for banks. We've been innovating for over 40 years and we serve banks all over the world. We have banks in over 20 countries, from the largest tier 1 banks in the world down to the smallest emerging startup banks. We essentially provide what we call a messaging hub. So banks with a Swift device, we will import all of their Swift messaging and we can store them in a centralised location. There's full audit trail on there, and we have a modular based system. A bank may want to do account reconciliations or payments processing or securities matching. Our main focus is a messaging hub with modular systems plugged into that. Account reconciliations and payments processing. End to end, we do the full STP, full automation, and there'll be a full audit trail of those messages end to end, so you can see exactly when they were processed and if any messages have been modified, who done that and at what time have they done that. So we have 3 deployment options for Aquila. Option number 1 would be actually deploy it within the bank's tenancy. So the bank would own that cloud provider, the infrastructure. Number 2 would be on-premise, and third would be a full SaaS offering of Aquila. We're actually noticing, especially now with Dora coming out, option 1 seems to be the preferred option at the moment. So we would deploy Aquila within the bank's infrastructure. That gives them sort of full peace of mind and control over who can actually do what within the application, because technically the bank owns it. But if they still don't want the overhead of managing that infrastructure, we also offer a plug-in managed service, where that means it can still run within the bank's infrastructure, but Aqua Global would have access to certain services to be able to do maintenance, make sure everything is running as it should, and scale up service if they need to. So Aqua, we don't just deliver our software and hand it off to a third-party integrator to do all the setup. We actually do all of that in-house. That's a strategic decision that we've made because it's our reputation on the line. We want to make sure that the customer gets the best level of service they can possibly get, the best quality setup they can possibly get, and essentially the best product for them that they can possibly get. We do everything in-house. We build the software, we configure the software, we train users on the software, we do everything. Banks have 2 solutions to overcome ISO 20022. Solution number 1, replace your infrastructure or systems with systems that can actually cope with it and natively process these ISO messages, such as Aquila. Option number 2 would be use a simple translation tool to translate from old format to new format. Translation tool can be set up and implemented with Aquila in as little as 6 weeks. Option number 1, replacing your entire infrastructure, is a slightly more lengthy process, typically 6 months. If they're not ready in November, a few things could happen. A, it could really damage your reputation as a bank because you may not even be able to process payments. Payments may be stopped because there's not enough information there to verify an STP. Payments will be delayed. There could just be a whole load of issues. So the consequence to a bank by not being ready for the ISO 20022 deadline in November is you may not be able to process payments. So if you can't process payments as a bank, you're not a bank. The really good thing about Microsoft is they're super focused on security, and they have enterprise grade, bank grade, absolute critical applications running in Microsoft. We chose Azure as our partner of choice predominantly for 3 reasons. Number 1 being security. Microsoft spend over £1 billion on cybersecurity within the Azure tech stack each year, and they support some of the biggest enterprise grade solutions, and a lot of banks are running on Azure. So that was key for us, security. Secondly is scalability. We use the serverless compute functions within Azure. So this can be code running as separate functions on demand. This also helps a lot with your ESG rating because you're not running a huge server. Third is resiliency. The way we set up Azure is we have your primary region and then we have a secondary region running in an active state. So you can guarantee to say this system will not go down because I've got my primary system running here, an identical system running as a secondary here. If any component in the primary fails, there's auto failover to switch over, so you're covered. Also in terms of backups, you don't have to worry about that anymore. That's a thing of the past. It's point in time, instant restoration. I think one of the biggest challenges banks face when moving to the cloud is they don't necessarily do it in the right way. Before, there was a big mentality of almost doing like a lift and shift. You had an application which would be running on your on-premises server downstairs and it had been working for ages, and the bank decides, yeah, let's go to the cloud. And what they end up doing is just creating a virtual machine in the cloud provider and taking that code or application that's running there and literally lift it and shift it to a cloud VM. And there's absolutely no benefit. And to be honest, it's actually probably a disadvantage because you need somebody that knows what they're doing with this virtual machine. It's a different way of managing, it's a different way of patching, and also it's just going to be costing you a lot more money. If you've already got that server running down there doing a job, use it. Where banks go wrong, and companies in general go wrong, is they don't move to the cloud in the right way. And there is definitely a right way and a wrong way of moving to the cloud. A bank shouldn't move their technology from a legacy product to the cloud if they are literally lifting and shifting. They will get zero benefit, and actually they will get disadvantages because it will just cost them more. They're going to have to learn a new tech stack, learn new skills to be able to manage that cloud infrastructure, and it's just going to be another pain in the arse for the bank. The differences of running a legacy application in the cloud compared to a cloud native application would be cost, would be performance, security, just future-proofing yourself. You're not going to get a good service if you are lifting and shifting a legacy product from an on-prem installation to the cloud. If you select, or if you have a cloud native product that is actually built to run in the cloud in the right way using microservices and serverless compute and fully managed services from that cloud provider, the cloud provider will do all of the heavy lifting, all of the maintenance, all of the security patching, which is huge, and just the general day-to-day running and management of that infrastructure. You just have to essentially make sure that your application runs. Moving to the cloud in the right way looks like planning carefully and selecting the correct vendor. Using the latest technology in the right way is key for banks, and I think banks really have to step up and modernise. There's a lot of these sort of startup banks that are all online. You can set up an account just from your phone, and I think the traditional banks really need to either fill that gap by stepping up in terms of technology or maybe covering that in a different way. But I think in terms of the technology, you have a huge advantage because your system can infinitely scale, so you don't have to worry about buying hardware. You don't have to worry about that hardware going bad. You don't have to worry about replication, disaster recovery, scalability, resilience, any of that sort of stuff. If you do the cloud in the right way, and I emphasize in the right way because there's a lot of bad ways that you can go to the cloud. We've seen customers that have just created, a virtual machine and said, well, I'm now using the cloud, and that is probably a really bad use case for it. And I think there's over the last couple of years, there's been a bit of negative press around the cloud costing too much. And I think primarily it's for that reason, the lift and shift mentality. Whereas if you do the cloud in the proper way, using microservices and serverless, compute on demand, it really helps, A, with cost, B, with security, and also it has a big impact on your ESG score because you're only using the cloud when you need it. You don't have to have this huge server that's running 24/7 with another one on hot standby, for example. So it's a really, really good, well, it's critical actually. I think it's absolute essential for banks to step up and really do cloud in the right way.